Hey everyone, welcome to our deep dive. We're tackling Ryan Holiday's Ego is the Enemy today.
Yeah, it's a good one.
I'm really excited to dig into this one. It feels super relevant, especially in today's world.
It is.
So much noise, so much pressure to I don't know,
Be seen.
be seen, be heard,
Yeah,
be successful.
right.
So how does Holiday even define ego? Because it's not always obvious, right?
Yeah, no, it's definitely
What actually is.
it's a bit slippery. But I think he does a really good job in the book. He uses this analogy from Aristotle about a warped piece of wood.
Okay.
So imagine you're a woodworker, right?
Yeah.
You're trying to straighten out this warped piece of wood.
Yeah.
You're not going to just hope it straightens itself out. You're going to have to apply pressure in the opposite direction of the warp to try to get it straight.
Okay.
And our ego is kind of like that warp.
I see. It's distorting things.
It distorts our perception.
Yeah.
And it leads us astray. It can sabotage our progress. It keeps us from seeing things clearly.
Right. So it's not about getting rid of our ego completely because, we need some sense of self, right?
Yeah.
But it's more about, like you said, applying pressure, recognizing,
Being aware of it.
being aware of it.
Recognizing when it's leading us astray.
Yeah.
It's a process.
And probably a constant one at that, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's we're never going to be perfectly straight pieces of wood, but we can always be striving to be a little bit straighter, a little bit more aligned.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And I feel like that's especially true today with social media and everything. It's just this breeding ground for ego, isn't it?
Oh, it totally is. Think
Yeah.
about it. We're constantly bombarded with images of other people's highlight reels, right?
Yeah.
And it's so easy to get caught up in comparing ourselves and feeling like we need to be constantly promoting ourselves, showing off our accomplishments, seeking validation.
And Holiday talks about how that need for validation can actually be our downfall. He uses the example of Upton Sinclair, right?
Yeah, Upton Sinclair. Oh, that's a great example. He was so sure he was going to win the election for governor of California.
That he wrote a book about it before it happened.
He wrote a whole book celebrating his victory before he had actually won.
What was he thinking?
I know, right? Talk about ego gone wild.
Seriously. And of course, he ended up losing. It's like a cautionary tale right there.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it's not just politicians or famous people who fall into this trap. We all do it.
Oh, absolutely. I know I'm guilty of it. It's so easy to get caught up in appearing successful rather than actually doing the work.
Right. And Holiday talks about this writer, Emily Gould. She gets this big book deal. But then instead of, actually writing the book, she spends all her time on social media, building her platform, and it totally backfires.
It's like we trick ourselves into thinking that talking about something is the same as actually accomplishing it.
Totally. And there's actually research on this,
Is there?
Holiday talks about how just by talking about a task, our brains can be tricked into thinking we've made progress, even if we haven't actually done anything.
Wow. That's kind of scary, actually.
It is. It shows how powerful our minds are and how easy it is to get sidetracked by our own ego's need for validation. So how do we actually break free from this cycle?
That's the million-dollar question, right? And I think that's where Holiday's strategies for conquering our ego come in. What are some of the things we can do to kind of keep our egos in check?
Well, one of the things that Holiday talks about is this idea of staying a student.
Oh, interesting.
Even when we achieve success.
Yeah.
Especially when we achieve success.
Because you think you've got it figured out.
Exactly. You're like, I'm at the top of my game. I know what I'm doing.
Right.
But Holiday argues that that's actually when it's most dangerous.
Okay, I'm intrigued. So how do we stay students when we're feeling good about ourselves and our accomplishments?
Well, he tells this great story about Bill Walsh,
Okay.
the coach of the San Francisco 49ers. Legendary coach.
Right, I know Bill Walsh.
So they win the Super Bowl, right?
Huge accomplishment.
Huge. And you would think, okay, this is the time to celebrate, pop the champagne.
Yeah, victory lap.
Exactly.
Mhm.
But you know what Walsh does? He gathers his team together
No way.
immediately.
Get out of here.
And he starts dissecting their performance,
Oh, wow.
talking about what they could have done better.
So he's like, okay, great, we won, but how can we improve?
Exactly. He understood that, true success wasn't about just reaching a certain point.
It's a journey.
It's a journey. And it's about constantly striving for growth, always trying to learn and improve. And I think that's such a powerful lesson for all of us, no matter what we do.
It is, because it's so easy to get complacent, right? Oh, totally.
To rest on our laurels.
Especially when we've had some success.
Right. And I think that's why mentorship is so important, too.
Yeah. Huge.
Because you need someone to, like, call you out on your stuff.
You need those people in your life who are going to be honest with you,
Yeah,
who are going to challenge your assumptions. Because it's so easy to surround ourselves with yes men.
totally.
And then we end up in this echo chamber where our egos just run wild.
And that's a recipe for disaster, right?
Oh, yeah.
History is full of those cautionary tales.
Yes.
Leaders who surround themselves
Yeah.
with
Yes men.
yes men, and, eventually
They lose touch with reality.
they totally lose touch with reality.
And their empires crumble.
Genghis Khan, he was brilliant, a brilliant conqueror.
Absolutely. But as his power grew, he stopped listening to those wise counsel, to those dissenting voices, and surrounded himself with
People who just told him what he wanted to hear,
exact.
and it led to his downfall.
It's a classic trap, right? But how do we take that humility, that willingness to learn, and translate it into our actions? Because it's one thing to say, okay, I need to stay humble, but then how do we actually do that?
Right.
Especially when those tempting opportunities come knocking.
Well, that's where knowing our purpose comes in,
Okay.
our why.
Yeah.
What are we really here to do? And I love the example that Holiday gives of General William Sherman.
Okay, what about him?
So this guy, he was a brilliant general in the Civil War. He achieved incredible things. And after the war, he was offered the presidency.
Wow, that's a huge deal.
Huge honor. Yeah. And he says no.
He turns it down.
Flat out refuses.
Why?
Because he recognized that being president wasn't his true calling. It wasn't aligned with his purpose. He had achieved incredible military success.
Right.
But he knew that political power, that wasn't what he wanted his legacy to be. He knew his limits.
That's just as important as knowing what you do want, right? Knowing what you don't want, knowing where you belong, where you don't belong.
Exactly. And that kind of leads us to another important strategy, this idea of detachment from outcomes.
Oh, that's a tough one.
It is tough.
Because we're so conditioned to, strive for results.
Exactly. We're always focused on what's the outcome going to be?
Yeah.
But Holiday argues that that can actually be really freeing.
How so?
Well, when we're too attached to the outcome, when we're so focused on the reward or the recognition, we're more likely to be controlled by our ego's need for validation.
Right, because then it's not about the work itself, it's about what that work will get us.
Exactly. So Holiday uses this incredible story of this general Belisarius.
Oh, yeah, remind me about Belisarius.
Okay, so Belisarius, he's this brilliant general in the Roman Empire. He won these incredible victories, saved the empire from collapse multiple times. I mean, this guy was like a rock star.
Okay.
And he was deeply devoted to his duty. He was loyal, he was strategic. But despite all of that, he was betrayed and discarded by the very emperor that he served.
Are you serious? Talk about an underappreciated guy. So what's the lesson there? How do you even begin to grapple with that? Putting in all that effort, achieving amazing things, and then nothing. It's almost like, what's the point?
Right. Like, where do you even find fulfillment when it seems like the world just isn't fair,
Yeah.
when your efforts aren't recognized or appreciated the way you think they should be?
Exactly. So what was the point of all of Belisarius' sacrifices if the world was just going to forget him?
Well, and that's what's so interesting about his story. He found fulfillment. He found it not in the fleeting approval of others,
Yeah.
but in the integrity of his own actions, like knowing that he had always striven to do his duty to the best of his ability. That's where he found his fulfillment.
That's deep. It's it's not about the external validation. It's about that internal compass,
It is.
knowing that you did the right thing, even if no one else knows or cares. Wow.
That shift in perspective, it can be really freeing because when our sense of worth isn't tied to these external outcomes, we're less likely to be controlled by our ego's need for validation,
Yeah, absolutely. It's about finding that inner peace, that inner strength that comes from being aligned with your values, even when the world isn't cooperating or even noticing, for that matter.
Exactly.
That's powerful stuff. But okay, we've talked about staying grounded when things are good,
Yeah.
right? And now this idea of finding that inner fulfillment even when things are bad. But what about when things go really south? When we experience setbacks, failures, disappointments, that's where ego can really rear its ugly head, right?
Oh, for sure. And it often manifests as defensiveness. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, totally. You want to blame someone else.
Yeah.
You want to make excuses.
Totally. It's like we
Yes.
can't handle the hit to our egos.
Exactly. And Holiday uses that example of John DeLorean, right?
Oh, the DeLorean story.
Yeah.
What a cautionary tale that is.
Talk about ego gone wrong.
Right. So for anyone who doesn't know, John DeLorean was
A legend.
A legend in the auto industry.
Yeah.
Designed iconic cars.
Yeah.
But when his own company started failing, he just couldn't let go. His ego just wouldn't allow it.
It's hard to imagine the pressure he must have been under, though, right? I mean, to have so much success, to be on top of the world,
Absolutely.
and then to watch it all crumble.
And to watch it all crumble. But instead of acknowledging the problems, adapting, maybe changing course, he just doubled down.
Oh, wow.
Refused to listen to criticism.
The ego is too big.
Too big. And it ultimately led him down this really dark path involving some really, questionable decisions.
Right. Criminal activity, even.
Yes. To try and salvage this failing business.
It's heartbreaking in a way because you can see how it's all driven by this, desperate need to preserve his image, his sense of self-worth,
Yeah, old ego.
Totally. So how do we navigate those inevitable failures and setbacks with a bit more grace, with a little less ego leading the charge?
It's tough.
It is.
But I think Holiday gives us a good roadmap with the story of Katharine Graham.
Okay, remind me about her. Who was she again?
So she took over the Washington Post.
Oh, right, the newspaper.
After her husband's suicide.
Wow.
And, she had zero experience in the publishing world.
Wow. Talk about a trial by fire.
Right. I mean, she's stepping into this role in the middle of a really tumultuous time.
And a male-dominated field, too, right?
Absolutely.
That's incredible. So how did she handle that pressure?
She had to learn to trust her gut.
Yeah.
Surround herself with really capable people.
Get a good team around you.
Mm-hmm. She had to learn to make difficult decisions. And sometimes they weren't popular, but she did it. She really stepped into her power.
That's incredible. And I think there's a powerful message there, right? That we often underestimate our own strength, our own resilience.
We totally do.
It's often in those moments of adversity that we discover how much we're truly capable of.
Totally. And, even in those dark moments, when we're wrestling with those setbacks and failures, there's still room for love and forgiveness. And Holiday reminds us of that with the story of Orson Welles and Citizen Kane.
Oh, yeah, with William Randolph Hearst. That's right. Didn't Hearst try to, destroy the film because he thought it was based on his life?
Oh, he did. He was furious. Used all his power and influence to try to bury it. But it backfired, didn't it?
Spectacularly.
Right. And all his actions, all that anger and resentment just amplified the film's impact. And it's a powerful reminder of how destructive those emotions can be.
Yeah. For everyone involved, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
Because not only do they, poison our relationship.
They eat away at us.
Yes. They eat away at our own well-being. And I love that Frederick Douglass quote that Holiday uses about how no man can degrade you without your consent.
Right? It's like we have a choice in how we respond to the negativity. We don't have to let it control us.
Totally. So much easier said than done, though, right?
Oh, for sure.
To, choose love and forgiveness when someone's just wronged you or when you're feeling hurt and angry. It's tough.
It's incredibly tough. But it's not about condoning the behavior or pretending that it didn't happen. It's about recognizing that holding on to that anger and resentment.
It just hurts us more in the end.
Exactly. So we've talked about how to stay grounded when things are good, how to navigate those tough times, and even how to find forgiveness. But I think the real question is, how do we keep it all in perspective?
Right, because it's easy to get caught up in the day-to-day, right?
Totally. To let our egos run wild.
So how do we keep it all in check?
Well, Holiday talks about connecting with something larger than ourselves. Okay, I like where we're going with this.
He calls it cosmic insignificance.
Cosmic
Insignificance. And I know it sounds a little depressing at first.
It does sound kind of intense, yeah. But I think I get what he's saying.
It's about recognizing our place in this much grander scheme of things, He uses this beautiful John Muir quote about the vastness of nature and how it dwarfs our individual struggles and achievements and reminds us that, we are just a small part of something so much greater than ourselves.
It's like that feeling you get when you look up at the night sky.
Yeah.
And you see all those stars and you realize how small we are, how insignificant our problems seem in comparison to the vastness of the universe.
Exactly.
It's humbling in a good way.
In a really good way. And I think that sense of humility, that connection to something bigger, whether it's nature, art, spirituality, history, whatever resonates with you.
It takes you out of your head.
Yes. Out of our own little ego-driven worlds.
Exactly. And it connects us to something so much more expansive. It reminds us that there's more to life than our ego's very limited perspective.
Yes.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into ego is the enemy, I think the biggest takeaway is that this whole managing our ego thing,
It's a journey.
it's a journey. It's not a destination. It's about constantly striving for that self-awareness,
Yes.
for humility, for a willingness to learn and to grow even, and maybe especially, when we achieve success.
Because that's when we need it the most.
That's when we need it the most.
Yeah.
And remembering that our ego, as powerful as it is, it doesn't have to control us. We have a choice in how we respond to its whispers.
We always have a choice.
We always have a choice. And you know what? When we choose humility, when we choose purpose, when we choose connection, we open ourselves up to a far more fulfilling and meaningful life.
Absolutely.
It makes you think about people like Malcolm X, who transformed his entire life in prison using his mind, the very thing that he felt had held him back for so long. What could we all accomplish if we harnessed the power of our own minds? If we directed that energy towards growth and purpose?
It's a good question. What do we want our legacy to be?
It is a good question. And on that note, we'll leave you with that thought. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into Ego is the Enemy. Until next time.